Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio program, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder, and our program today is about that point of power, that place between stimulus and response, that opportunity you have to choose your own perception.
Life is a two-way street, and most of us are only watching one direction, and that's what's being done to us. There is, in fact, though apparently not so obvious, an opportunity to respond to what's being done to you, to either react reflexively or, better said, to consciously choose to initiate a response. But between what's done to you and what you choose to do with it, in the middle there is a point of perception. Between stimulus and response, an opportunity to choose an attitude, an outlook, or, gosh, Steve, a whole point of view, a whole reality.
Yeah, most people, in fact, almost everyone lives much of their life, at least on autopilot, just doing what you did last time. You don't really have to think about like left, right, or up, down when you're brushing your teeth. You know, you get to do things by habit. But many people live almost their entire lives that way. They just do what they did last time. And then there are other people who choose perception. Now, there's, lots of different attitudes people have. There are people who purposely choose a negative perception of life. They purposely choose to see everything through a pessimistic lens. What could go wrong? Worry. Anything that they do that's preparing themselves for things that go wrong, any worrying they do, they're proud of themselves for. They think this is like they're bracing themselves for the worst, and they think that this is like the right, smart, logical attitude to have, and that anybody who's spending a lot of time on thinking about dreams, that's airy-fairy, if something good happens, hey, anybody can handle that. It's got to be prepared for the worst is what you got. And so people choose to see life through that perception. There are people who take it way too far the other direction and see life through the rose-colored glasses of Pollyanna optimism, like, nothing bad could ever happen to me. I'm just going to jaunt along in my life, and only wonderful things could happen because I've got great karma, and all my past lives tell me that everything people get into this magical, mystical thinking and think that they're surrounded by this aura of invincibility. There's reality to perception. And I mean, even though reality may be with a capital R reality, your perception changes it for you. I'm reminded of that story that I heard you tell about a guy that called your radio show and said, people just keep making me get in fights. Whenever I go to a bar, people just make me get in fights. And I'm thinking, wow, it's like somebody has like a bad attitude or like is abusive and verbally abusive to me. And the first thought could be, they're challenging my manhood. I have to punch them out. That's their perception. My perception of that would be, boy, this guy must have had a really bad day. I wonder if I could take him to lunch or something. So the same stimulus creates totally and completely different responses in two different people because of the perception, the lens they saw it through.
The idea that we're all watching the same movie or perceiving the same objective reality is one that we've got to dispel early in our lives. It's never too late to wake up and realize that, and you say this a lot, even if there is an objective reality, let's grant that. But nevertheless, hasten to add that we're not likely to see it because we're going to have our own particular spin or our bias, or our glasses, as you say, will be colored by and filtered by our experience. And so even in news, I remember going back to my college textbooks when I began to teach at Mount San Antonio College in Southern California to look up this whole idea of objectivity. Because as a news person working in the business at ABC and CBS, it's very clear that they had policies of objectivity. But when I went back to the journalism textbook, they talked about truth, honesty, fairness, accuracy. They said nothing about objectivity. In fact, the whole idea was that in a democracy, people should be well informed by a variety of people from diverse points of view doing their best to say how they see it. And then we read between the lines. We're better informed than if everybody was trying to come together to reinforce some conventional wisdom. We're not served by that in the news business and in life in general in the same way. We're not served by trying to find some common conventional wisdom or objective reality. That's just a consensus of what most people believe in most cases. And they may be right, they may be wrong. That may fit for you. Often, I think you've noticed, it doesn't fit. And you have to acknowledge your own reality. Imagine going to the holodeck in Star Trek, remember, and you're going to program this reality and trying to program what you do not want. And then you're going to go and no, you've got you've got to set up what you do want. And this point of view between stimulus and response, between cause and effect, between what's done to you and what you choose then to do with it, is a very, very powerful and liberating concept.
Yeah, it is the point of power. It's where you take control of your life. It's where you go from being a victim to being in charge. It's where you go from being asleep to waking up. Let's take the three pieces: stimulus, perception, and when stuff happens, sometimes you have a lot of control over it. I mean, sometimes you put yourself in that place. You got yourself there at that time. You even set it up that this thing would happen. And sometimes you get blindsided and stuff happens. They had no way of preparing for it. Nobody in the world could have prepared for it. And everything in between. So in terms of stimulus, you have sometimes some control, sometimes little control, sometimes absolutely no control. But no guarantees that you're going to have any control in terms of stimulus. Yeah, you have some ability to put yourself in the right place at the right time, but stuff happens to everybody. You know, it all happens to everybody. And the response, now, we all have the same ability to do exactly what we did last time, next time. That's that autopilot thing. That's actually not even a response. It's really a reaction. It's like knee-jerk. It's like if you don't think about it, you know, your habit thing is going to make you do exactly what you did last time. So everybody has that, and mostly we use that most of the time. But it's those people who look before they leap, who take that stop, look, and listen thing, who take that extra moment to say, wait a minute now, let me look at it this time and see if it's any different than it was last time, and see if I want to do the same thing I did last time or do something different than I did last time. That's the point of power. To stop after the stimulus and before the response, to stop and say, do I want the response to be reaction, the same reaction as last time, or do I want this response to be unique? Can I do what I did last time a little better this time, or can I do something totally different this time? And so that's the point of power. Now, the difficulty with that is that it doesn't come automatically. It's got to be a choice. It's got to be something you decide to do. And if you're in stress, your brain's not really capable of making that decision. If you're all stressed out, your brain puts survival ahead of this opportunity to step back and explore doing things better. If you feel like you're in danger, you got to act fast, you know, fight or flight. So there's no time to take that step in between the stimulus and response. It's living in stress that causes people to be so reactive. So we have to get out of stress to be able to take that step back to actually access that higher consciousness we have, the ability to step back and observe ourselves and choose to have a different perception this time.
And that's the word, choice, isn't it? I like to say that to myself in that way as a point of power. When I find myself acting habitually or using the lizard brain rather than the higher brain functions that I have, I remind myself I have choices. That's what I say. Michael, hold on, slow down. I may not know what they are right now. I may have no idea. It might look like there's only one thing to do: strike back or run away, right? I guess that would be two things, fight or flight. But still, that reaction, right? But that there's a third way or a fourth option or a fifth possibility requires us to say consciously to ourselves and practice saying, wait a minute, even if I'm not sure exactly what they are right now, I have choices. That's the first thing I say to myself. Then I remind myself I always have more choices than are immediately apparent.
That was the big breakthrough for me. When you said, I remind myself I have choices. I go, yeah, I do that. And then you said, I remind myself that I have more choices than I first noticed I have. And I go, whoa, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because that's big, because you have to stop again and now look for even some more choices.
Well, it's the same process that we're talking about, which is to split the either-or with something in the middle. Philosophers call it the middle way. It's very well understood in Eastern philosophy, but Western philosophy too. This is the breakthrough from binary, or sometimes it's called monotheistic thinking, all black, all white. Absolutism is what it is. But the truth is, there's always a third way, a permutation, a combination, a variation, a different slice or a blend of how to do things. And then, well, wouldn't that set up a fourth way or a fifth possibility or a sixth way of looking at things? Now we've put rainbows between the black or white. And what a richer, more rewarding and wonderful place to live.
I was just reminded of a Dylan line. He said, when you thought you lost everything, you find out you could always lose a little more. It's like there are always more choices in both directions.
Is that the same as you don't know what you got till it's gone?
Yeah, pave paradise and put up a parking lot. So the idea here is, take the point of power. Don't just give it up by being stressed. By being stressed, you give up your power. You just are going to do what you did last time. Now, maybe what you did last time is okay. I'm not saying that, your life might be just fine and you might be moving along at a real good B+, A- clip, everything's doing. But it seems to me that there's always some room for improvement. And the only way you'll get improvement, even if things are going really well, is at some point to choose to get better. Now, satisfaction and even like resting and, that's a cool place. It's a pit stop. It's an okay place to be sometimes. You don't have to be driven all the time to make changes, to get better, to grow. But satisfaction is only a rest area. It's never a place that you can stop and live at forever, because there's a part of us that wants to grow. There's a part of us that wants to improve and get better. And this is how you do it. The way you get off of autopilot, and of course you don't get better on autopilot, the way you get off of autopilot is to choose to be conscious. And so you don't have to always do it, but at some point when you're ready to grow, and for example, you always spend your evening with your spouse in this kind of nice way, but at some point you say, I want to take it to another level. I want to stop and think, and when she starts a conversation, well, maybe I can take it in another direction that'll make it more intimate, more engaging, more, because I really would like to grow the power of our conversation. I'm going to not just respond the same way I always do. I'm going to ask a question that delves with some depth, or I'm going to reveal something about myself that would start an interesting conversation. It's a conscious choice to start making things better. And it always comes in between the stimulus and the autopilot response. You have to stop the autopilot response, make a choice to do something better, and then in that way begin to reprogram the automatic pilot function. I mean, it's not an automatic response anymore. Next time, maybe you'll do that, but maybe you'll do something cool again next time because you broke the pattern and did it different this time.
This argues against the whole idea of habit, at least in many areas of our lives. I think there's lots of opportunity for us to be unconsciously competent, like you mentioned, brushing your teeth or walking. But this experience we sometimes have of driving a car and suddenly remembering you're driving a car and you have no recall of the last 5 minutes. You don't remember getting on the freeway because you've been doing it the same way, the same time, every day, day after. You don't remember stopping at the red light or making a left or making sure the light was even green before you went. And it's sort of a strange feeling that most people, I think, will admit having.
I found it happened a lot more on the 405 in Los Angeles than it is on a highway here in Maui.
Well, the more stimulus.
Yeah, I mean, you got to pay attention when you're driving here.
The more stimulus, the more stress. You could go either way. There is a highway hypnosis phenomena.
Especially when driving someplace you've been so many times before.
Right. So I think some things like walking or brushing your teeth or, your in your daily life and affairs, fiddling around and having habits and ways of doing things competently yet unconsciously makes sense. What we're arguing, however, is don't over-rely on that, because then your whole life is lived in this daze, in this haze, in this hypnosis. I used to have fun with people when they would approach me with a certain concern about hypnosis versus meditation and deep relaxation. And sometimes they'd say, "You're not going to hypnotize me, are you?" And I said, "Oh, no, we're going to wake you up." And it's really true.
A rose by any other name.
Whatever you call it, hypnosis, meditation, it's more a process of waking up than going to sleep. Imagine expanded awareness coming not from wide awake, but from what Steve and I like to call narrow awake. A point of focus, again, where is it? It's in the middle. This time between awake and asleep, just like your point of power is between stimulus and response, between what's happening to you and what you choose to do with it. The magic is always in the middle. The secret is in the center.
Yeah, it is, because the extremes cause the pain. Going far out in either direction, you're trying to push things to be different than they are, and that's very, very painful. Things are the way they are. But we do have the ability to change the future. We can create the future. The best way to be able to predict the future is to create it. So we can create the future. And the way we do that is by grabbing hold of that point of power in between stimulus and response, that place where we choose our perception. So I guess what I'm saying is pick areas of your life that matter the most, your relationship, your career, your health, those areas that matter the most. And when you find yourself having a thought and, there's an opportunity to follow it with the same old thought you had last time, like, I really ought to make a doctor's appointment. Yeah. Now, this time you can say, I really ought to make a doctor's appointment, and then go, wait a minute now. That's like the 9th time I've said that to myself in the last, this is true happening for me right now. This is the 9th time I've said that to myself. So yeah, I really, don't just say, yeah, okay, do something now. Okay, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm writing my book. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'm going to call and make, that changes your life. When you take the power from that automatic response that you had last time, which didn't change anything, to choosing to do something different this time. That between the stimulus, which is that little nudge, I'm saying I need to make a doctor's appointment, and the response, which in the past has always been yeah, and not doing anything. Now I can stop and not autopilot do that yeah, but go, wait a minute. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, write it in the book, make the commitment, make the call, make the appointment,
Wake up and be mindful. We're back to this idea of detaching from habit, detaching from routine and rote behavior, waking up, moving to this middle point, whether you call it narrow awake between asleep and awake, between unconscious and overstimulated, don't you see, or between cause and effect, between stimulus and response. This middle path, this middle element is often referred to as the way, or a path, a means of getting from one side of that equation, what's being done to me, the stimulus, to the other side, what I choose to do with it, and substitute that for the knee-jerk reaction that usually arrives if you're unprepared, if it's perceived as potentially dangerous, fight or flight. You've got this backup system that is going to cause you to react automatically. But again, it's going to be everything or nothing. It's going to be, stop, who goes there, friend or foe? Are you with me or against me? Right? And always beware of people who promote that absolutist view. There are relative truths in this world. Not all truth is absolutely true or absolutely false. Any philosopher would concede that it's likely there are absolute truths, but most of what we see in our daily life and affairs is relatively true. It's a matter of degree.
I mean, I can say the earth revolves around the sun and say that's true. And I can say the sun revolves around the earth and say that's not true. But I can also say I understand women and say that's true and not true. That's quite relative, So most things we say are true are in fact mostly true or somewhat true, but factual when it gets to mathematics maybe, but not when it gets to using words.
Well, even then you have the partial truth or the incomplete truth. The idea of the earth revolving around the sun is relative to the fact that our whole solar system is revolving around a spiralic galaxy, and that those galaxies are moving relative to all the other galaxies in our neighborhood. And we leave that out if we just argue about whether the sun comes up in the morning or the earth is rotating into its direction. And that's an important philosophical concept. Come on, you guys, it's not that complicated, is it? To zoom out. See, this is really what expanded awareness is in so many ways. It's a gentle pullback, an elevation of perspective that allows you to see the bigger picture, The more complete truth, the more holistic truth, even if it's not absolute, it may continue to be relatively true, but celebrate that you have both kinds of truth. And the relative truth you're going to encounter a lot more often than the absolute truth, that's for sure.
Indeed. And, the truth is always filtered through your perception, whatever truth it is. Let's start with the basic concept of mood. That's a really interesting concept of mood. People have moods, and some people live in a mood. This is a negative, dark person. They're almost always, we even call them moody, but they're not really moody. They're in one mood. They stay in that same mood. And then there are people who are truly moody. They're up some days, they're down some days, and there are other people who are mostly positive and in a good mood, mostly in a good mood. Mood is a choice. Mood is not imposed upon us, ever. Mood is the same circumstances cause one person to have one mood and another person to have another mood. Mood is a choice, but mood is almost always an unconscious choice. Mood, which is really that point of power, that point of perception, the first layer that you come in contact with after the stimulus is whatever mood you're in when that stimulus hits you. That first veil that it goes through, that mood, you chose that mood, either by unconsciously agreeing to be in the same mood you were in when you went to bed last night, or by deciding this morning that the sun is out and the sky is blue and it's beautiful and I'm going to be in a good mood today. You can choose that choice first of all, above all, and everything else gets colored by the mood you're in. And I think most people don't really take responsibility for the mood they're in. They just think it's imposed upon them. Mood is stimulus. Mood is not stimulus. Mood is the response you have to the perception you have of how you feel you want to be.
Can we say mood is attitude?
Yeah, mood is part of the attitude.
And attitude, as you and I were saying before we started the program today, we were chatting a little about learning about space travel when we were teenagers and the before the Apollo series, the Gemini series, the Mercury
was the first.
That's when we learned about
the 7 astronauts.
Yeah, and that's when we learned about pitch, roll, and yaw.
Yeah.
The 3 dimensions.
Right.
And so airplane pilots and rocket ship pilots are concerned about their attitude as well as their altitude, your orientation in life. That's what we're talking about. Consider that you're not just a victim, a target, or an effect. You're an airplane. You're a rocket ship. You're a self-directed being that can choose an attitude, that can consciously choose a response, a person who has choices. Now, what do you have to give up to be that powerful? Helplessness and victimization. Good. What else? The sense that you're going to get some sympathy, and that'll be almost as good as love. Okay? Let me remind you, sympathy is not love. Sympathy is appropriate if somebody dies or the dog goes to dog heaven or something. There's plenty of opportunity to be sympathetic. It can be a beautiful thing, but not a lifestyle of looking for approval and acceptance and love through sympathy and pity. It's a horrible thing.
Woe is me, woe is me.
Great weight on people who want to be your friends. They just can't carry that load. Although sometimes what passes for conversation is just a pity party of people swapping their sad stories. I think it's pathetic and certainly not the best way to live a fulfilling life.
And yet people feel like by listening to their friends, stuff, they'll get their opportunity to dump their stuff. So it's like, I'm not even really paying attention to your stuff. I'm like waiting for you to stop making noise so I can dump my stuff out on you. And that, in lieu of love, sympathy feels. It doesn't feel great, but it feels better than empty. It feels something. And so people are willing to accept sympathy when they're really looking for love. Nobody really wants a lot of sympathy. A little sympathy when the puppy dies, yeah, but we really aren't looking for a lifestyle of sympathy. But when we can't have love or don't know how to have love, then we look for sympathy. The thing is, in order to have love, in order to let love into our lives, we have to love ourselves. Otherwise, even if people are trying, it won't get through. So if we feel bad about ourselves, we'll let sympathy in. So it's easy to be open to sympathy because all you have to do is feel sorry for yourself, and then but to let somebody say how wonderful you are, you have to think you're wonderful, or else you'll go, nah, and just push them away, and they'll never be around. So I guess one of my favorite things I ever wrote was, all love flows through your own love for you. And that love you have for yourself, the place you have the opportunity to make it grow is in this perception, in this place between stimulus and response. You can't change much about the stimulus, and your response won't change much unless you change your perception. So that's where you have the chance to let things filter through this. I love myself. I'm loving myself more. I'm enjoying myself more. I'm growing. I'm changing. I'm getting better. I'm blossoming. I'm at one of the great peaks of my life. That feeling changes the way you perceive everything else.
Well, no question about it. I'm also curious about our natural resistance as human beings to loving ourselves and accepting approval from other people. We want it, we need it, and yet we're resistant to it. Somebody wants to give you an award, and you stand up in front of a group and have to receive the award. That's terrifying.
Oh, it was one of the most exciting times of my life when it happened to me, but I'm not your normal guy.
But to most people, you understand.
Public speaking is the number one greatest fear of most
there
people.
You go.
Death is seventh,
And why? I think because it brings up deserving issues.
Sometimes, oftentimes.
There's a great cowboy movie Clint Eastwood made. I think it's called The Unforgiven, where at one point he's standing over this bad guy who's on his back in the barroom floor, and Clint Eastwood has the rifle. And the guy says, it's Gene Hackman, and he says to Clint Eastwood, don't shoot me, don't kill me, I don't deserve it. And Clint Eastwood's character says, deserving ain't got nothing to do with it. And then shoots the guy because he had killed his best friend. In cold-blooded murder. Deserving has nothing to do with it. I think that's a wonderful line. Where in the world do you get the idea that you have to deserve a hug in order to receive it, that you have to somehow merit a kindness to fully accept somebody's offering you a kindness? What is this reticence that we have to being too wonderful or too lovable? It's bizarre, and I think a product of our confusion, if nothing else.
Well, yeah, I mean, deserving ain't the issue because, people think life's supposed to be fair. Where does it say life's fair? Some people get
it's not fair.
Yeah, it's not fair. It's not even. It's not equal. There's nothing fair about it. Dylan said, man is opposed to fair play. He wants it all, and he wants it his way. If it was all fair, then we would be equalized with people in Africa, and we'd all have $3,000 a year income in the whole world. It's not fair. It's never going to be fair. It's not supposed to be fair. Looking for it to be fair causes people to have this negative attitude about life because you can find places where it's not fair everywhere. Now, to me, it's equally unfair is the key. It's I have the opportunity, the same opportunities everybody else has to go out and do some special things. Now, if I use my gifts, talents, and abilities and do what I love to do, then I'm much more likely to succeed than those people who think it's not fair and go try and push the river and try and do things that aren't natural for them to do, that just feel wrong for them to do. There's nothing fair about life, but there's a lot of power we have to make it turn out our way, to make it unfair in the big picture, to make it, if you need fair to be the example, to make it unfair in that we have all the advantages.
Yeah, well, there again, if you only see life, this goes back to the beginning of our program today, as the part that's done to you, then you're going to be patently aware of how unfair it is. But if you...
Unless you were born like a son of a billionaire and were given everything. And
you still might have to cop to the fact this really isn't very fair.
That's true.
It benefits me, but...
That's true.
And then what I'm saying is if you then look at the part that you can initiate, if you're aware of this middle point, this opportunity to choose an attitude, to choose choices, then we can begin to work for justice.
That's a very different concept. There needs to be justice.
This is our response to the unfairness in the world, not just to accept that things are unfair, but to work for social justice. This is, again, a choice or an attitude that we have. Can we fix the world? Probably not. Is it likely, as we create more fairness and social justice in the world, that other problems will unfold in front of us, and that process of unfoldment will continue? Well, yeah, but the rewards of working for social and personal justice, the rewards of trying to make things fair, even if you know you're never going to completely get there, I think speak volumes about, again, a happy and fulfilled life.
Yeah, that's true. You know, I said, well, what if you were born like the son of a billionaire? And then I remember Dylan had a line, helpless like a rich man's child. You know, it's like sometimes if you've got it all, you have all the disadvantages, like the butterfly that got helped out of the cocoon didn't get wings strong enough to grow, you know. So sometimes it's the adversity, you know, that makes us better. Not fair sometimes is good. It makes us stronger. But life is very much what you make it. It can be whatever you let it be. You can just sort of go on to neutral and live on autopilot, and life is what it's been, and it'll be what it's been. But life can be something quite different than it's been if you take the point of power, if you take and choose your perception. Starts with mood or attitude, the sort of the way you feel about things, the place you're just going to take, whatever it is that comes, you're going to take it through this sort of lens. And then it gets more specific. Then it's like, how am I going to look at this particular thing? You know, like, is this one of those things I'm going to pass on and just do it my old way, or is this one of those things I'm going to choose to do differently? That's really not a feeling process. That's an intellectual decision. That's a thought process. That's a higher consciousness stepping back, observing the situation, saying, am I pleased or happy enough with the way things are going? Do I want to make a change about this? We're not going to do that with every thought we have, but in every area of our life we can do that. We can certainly do it, you know, occasionally in any given area of our life. Step back and beyond everything's going okay. Specifically, what could I do to tweak it? What could I do to make it better? That's choosing to have a different attitude this time, to see it from a different altitude this time than you did last time.
This is a classic story in philosophy that we hear associated with the Buddha, the original Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha, who was born a prince with great wealth, and though his father and mother, the king and the queen, tried to protect him from the world, he discovered as a teenager, as kids eventually do, three things: that there is illness in the world, that there is aging, and that there is death.
Now, most kids don't get to be 15 or 16 before they find that out. Most kids discover something about those things early. Siddhartha was protected, isolated from those things as a prince.
He goes out into the world then and becomes an aesthetic. In other words, he gives up all of his clothing, all of his possessions, and does everything that he can to live a life of poverty, to eat 1 grain of rice a day, to sleep on a bed of nails, to deny every pleasure and seek out abstinence as a way of freeing himself from this discontentment, often called suffering in Buddhism, but it's really more like Mick Jagger and I can't get no satisfaction. I try and I try and I try, and I just can't quite feel like I'm okay. And then he finds the middle way. He hears, as the story goes, a guitar player and a student floating down the Ganges in a little boat. And the teacher is saying to the student, if the string is too loose, it will not sound. Too tight, and it will break. And Buddha realized there had to be a middle way in all things, a center. And that doesn't mean the 50-yard line. It could be a 60-40 or a 30-70 or a 99-1. It's that anything but the extremes. There's no point in the swing of a pendulum where the bottom of that pendulum is not influenced by both polarities. Same with a bar magnet. Because of the middle element, the magnetic field that unifies what seem to be opposite polarities, there's no place in the magnetic field of a bar magnet where you're not experiencing both polarities. There is wisdom in substituting for all of the ors, this or that, and then finding out the blend or the degree of the blend of a little of this and a little of that, and well, that's true for me, and I understand this is true for you. Let's bring it together in harmony and see if we can acknowledge these relative truths. This is real awareness. This is expanded awareness. And it all comes from remembering there's a middle between cause and effect. There's a center between what's done to you and what you choose with it. A point of power, a point of choice.
I'm reminded of the Eckhart Tolle story, I think it was, where he got to a point where he said, I can't live with myself anymore. And he goes, well, wait a minute. Who's the I that can't live with the myself? And that was the middle. He rose above the I and the myself to this higher consciousness. And he's like, well, here's this I over here who's pissed off at this myself over here. And this I over here doesn't want to live with this myself over there. But I'm not the I, or I'm not the myself. I'm the awareness of the fact that I have an I and a myself, and that's the middle way. That's the point of power in between. So we all have the ability to step out of that stressful autopilot lifestyle we have. Maybe not permanently, but we don't need to do it permanently. We just need to do it sometimes. We just need to break the pattern sometimes. Take a look at the habit patterns you have. Some of them are great. Some of them are fine. Some of them could be improved a little bit. Some of them should be like dumped and replaced with something completely different. You are not a victim of your habits. You're not a victim of your autopilot. These are tools to help you live your life. They're good things. You use them appropriately, but overusing habit, overusing autopilot, and you have a life that's the same yesterday as it will be tomorrow, and the unexamined life isn't worth living.
So let's install this. Let's do one of our celebrated audio journeys.
Celebrated, are they? How lovely.
One of my favorite parts of this whole program. We could never do this on the radio.
That's really one of the most exciting things about doing this as an audio program, is that because we had radio, you had radio for 30 years and I was with you for several, and it's lots of fun doing radio, but you can't tell people close your eyes and go to your peaceful place when they're driving their automobiles. You just can't do that.
You just can't take the chance even of it's not that people fall into some trance and drive off the road, but
you're telling them to close their eyes when they're driving a car. Just a bad idea, and
it could slow their reaction time a little bit. Again, we're promoting the idea of paying attention to what you're doing while you're doing it. So the idea of multitasking while you meditate. Well, I'm going to meditate and do these other things at the same time.
I can meditate and answer my emails, can't I?
It's absurd. I love the idea of narrow awake. Steve came up with this idea, and to me, it's a lot like using a magnifying glass. You can move into something that you want to come into focus with a magnifying glass, but if you pull back and you're outside and have enough light, there's another point of focus where that same magnifying glass acts in a different way and focuses the light that's coming in and could light the paper on fire instead of simply magnify it. So who decides that point of focus? Well, the conscious, sentient self. But as Steve has indicated a couple of times in today's program, and we talk a lot about, you're not going to do that when you're in normal, wide awake, overstimulated consciousness. There's just too much going on. So let's slow it down. It's an easy thing to do. To again find the middle, the secret in the center between asleep and unconscious and awake with monkey mind. Close your eyes, take a nice slow deep breath, and as you exhale, just feel the letting go of muscular tension. Feel the letting go as you gently take a second breath and then a third, nice, slow, deep breath. The letting go of tension, the letting go of the monkey mind, all those ideas competing for attention, and letting go effortlessly, so easily, of any emotional turmoil or disturbance you might be experiencing.
And your body releases its tension. Your emotions let go of their stress. And your mind quiets down. Your mind quiets down. And leaving behind the whole mess. And now you find yourself in paradise. In this place of peace that's serene And everything's beautiful, and everything's fragrant, and everything's beautiful and clean. And this becomes your point of perception. Every time you get to think twice, before you just react to the stimulus, you can find yourself in paradise. One deep breath, and now you're at choice. Now you've got access to that inner voice that says, do it different this time. You can improve. You can get out of that rut and into a groove. You can do something better. You can make it so cool. You don't have to act like you did back in school. Life is different now. You get to make choices. You get to make things up, and you get to invent, and you get to go where your passion is bent. You get to follow your heart, and you get to see things real clear. Because here in paradise, you let go of your fear. So this is the place. Here's your choice. In this paradise state, you always hear a voice of higher consciousness that's confident and free of the fear. No hesitation, the voice is quite clear, and you'll find it here. One deep breath, and you can create this point of perception, where your perception is great.
Come here when you're confused. Come here when you feel like a target, a victim, or an effect of life. Done to with few choices other than to run away or try to fight back. Instead, come here and remind yourself, I have choices. Number 2, there are always more choices than are immediately apparent. Number 3, my choices are in how I choose to look at things and what I choose to do with them. I have these 2 areas to decide. What's my point of view, my perspective, my attitude, and what do I choose to substitute for that knee-jerk reaction? What even-tempered, well-reasoned response makes sense and is in my interest? And then I'd add one more. Little question, little query. And that's, how could I choose a perception and a response from all the new choices that are occurring to me in this place of peace and relaxation that is not only in my best interest, but for the greater good of all concerned? I have choices. Number 2, more than are immediately apparent. 3, in the area of perception and response, choosing what's best for you and, to your greatest ability to be discerning, what would serve the greater good, a win-win situation, and then initiate that response. Or initiate out of whole cloth, a whole new behavior, marching to your very different drummer rather than playing the same tune that everybody else has been playing. Initiate it. Be the initiate. Initiate yourself as an initiate in initiating, creating, proposing, and causing a particular behavior.
So start with choosing your attitude, your state of mind. You choose your mood. Choose the feeling with which you wish to be imbued. Choose that to begin. And as you do, everything changes as it comes into you. First, choose your mood. Decide to be. in a compassionate, loving, feeling carefree. So observe your universe from this point of view, and it completely changes everything you do. First choice is your mood, how things will feel. You're not changing anything that's real, you're just changing its appeal. And it makes it much easier to deal with whatever comes through when your attitude is chosen by you.
You are the master of your destiny, the captain of your ship. You get to be in the driver's seat. You can take that reactive, fearful, egoic self and put it over in the passenger seat. Its job is to ride shotgun, to look over its shoulder. It'll have your back if the danger is ever real. But put in the driver's seat the part that looks forward through the windshield, to the front of the car and on down the road, the horizon. And be that positive, goal-oriented being that chooses direction, learns along the way from what others might call failure or a mistake. You see as learning opportunities, getting better and better and better every day in every way. Just feel it. Carry that orientation, that attitude, that belief system. The law of mind, cause and effect. You reap what you sow. The law of attraction, karma. What goes around comes around. You go where you look. You get what you expect. Moving forward with a positive attitude as the one who chooses your direction and your outcome. And choose now to bring this feeling with you effortlessly back into the room. As you take a nice, slow, deep breath, hold as you peak. Oh, and as you exhale, feel the letting go and open your eyes now, wide awake and alert, rested and refreshed, better than before.
That's a good attitude, better than before. In every way, getting better and better. That's sort of been a credo that you and I have followed for a long time. It's originally from Emile Coué, I guess, in the 1800s, long time ago. Every day and every way I'm getting better and better. I don't know that I believe that every single day and every single way I'm getting better and better, but it doesn't matter if I consciously, logically believe it. I can have evidence to show it's not true, but the fact is, my subconscious mind hears that, and it goes, well, that's the way it's supposed to be, so let's work toward making that come true.
Well, and that's your direction. It's sort of like heading across a river in a boat. The current might carry you downstream, the wind might blow you upstream, but you still want to have a detailed and accurate, pinpointed location to begin to move in that direction.
Yeah, because if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
There you go. Thank you, George, for that. Hey, thanks for listening. Remember the Maui Retreat. Check it out at theagelesswisdom.com and focusedpassion.com. In fact, focusedpassion.com is where you want to go to forward these programs to your friends. It doesn't cost you a cent, not a nickel, to forward these programs because you're a subscriber, a contributor to our larger personal and spiritual development efforts here. So forward those programs, forward the program on the Maui Retreat. Check it out. It's coming up in February. It'll be here before you know it. This is Maui's only real intensive mindfulness retreat, and I know you're going to want to be there. And if you have questions, let us know. Email us at info@focusedpassion.com, info, info@focusedpassion.com, or give us a call on the contributor support line. It's a LA number. You can call 24/7, 818-973-3154. Leave a message with your telephone number and area code, your name, and a good time to reach you, and I'll call you back personally, 818-973-3154.
Yeah, it's going to be something. It's going to be like a memory in the making. You'll be able to feel paradise, experience paradise, and take it home, anchor it, take it home, and have it anytime you want. I'm thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have paradise in a traffic jam?
On demand in the traffic jam. Doo-dah, doo-dah.
Doo-dah, doo-dah.
Hey, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. We'll talk to you next week. Be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.